Welcome back everyone. So in this video, we have mentioned in the last one, we will try to set up one studio setup, and then we will do the material and the texturing for this bench model. Yeah. So let's get started. So what I'll be doing is we'll be doing a studio setup in Corona Render. Generally, I use both the V-Ray and Corona in my workflow. As per the project needs, it can vary. So let's start with that. First and foremost, we'll be needing one studio setup. For the studio setup, what we will be needing first is the backdrop, and then we'll be adding two or three lights. One of them will act like a key light, and then the rest of the two will be mostly a fill or the rim light. That's how it will be. So let's get started. Let me save my file. Now we will start with our studio backdrop. I can delete all my references and the bounding box. Turning on my grid by pressing G, you can see that my model is floating a little in the air. We can fix that. Now we will create one rectangle. Let's make it 300 by 300 or 450. Let's keep it 300 by 450. Now we'll right click, convert to editable spline, select these two edges and delete. So on this spline, what we will do is we will add one shell to add some thickness to it. Yeah, we can outline -5. It will create one outline for the spline, and then we can extrude it, let's say 450. Add one more segment just to get center line properly. Effect pivot only, center to object, and then like we did before, I'm simply snapping the backdrop to the furniture. Now we have the studio setup, studio backdrop, not the setup. Now, in order to start with the lighting, we will apply one clay material to the backdrop and the furniture. Oops. Corona. Materials, Corona, physical material. We don't have to change anything, we are simply applying it. So the default material, whatever that we are getting, we generally call it as clay material as well. Now we need to add one camera. In order to add the camera, we come to more create panel, and then if we are going here, you can see that there is a button called camera. Click on that, Corona camera. Since we are using Corona, if you are using V-Ray, you can simply go ahead with the physical camera that is mentioned over there. I'm switching my perspective view to the camera by pressing C. Shift F to see the render preview, not the render preview, but the frame. So you can see that there are two black bands that are coming up in the viewport, both the sides of the viewport. What it generally means is that these two areas will get clipped when you are doing the render. This is how your render frame will look like. So that is based mostly on your output size and the aspect ratio that you are giving here. So if you switch to custom, you can see that it is coming like this, 640 by 480. Now if I'm increasing the width, the width in the viewport also is increasing. Height, if I'm reducing or increasing, you can see that viewport also is updating based on the dimensions that is given here. I like to keep it in the default for the time being. 1280 720 also is fine. The resolution doesn't really matter here. The preview that you are seeing right now is like the just the overall frame. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you are switching to 2K or the 3K, 2K or 4K, it will reflect the resolution detail as well. It just retains the original resolution. So yeah, now the camera also is set up. We will add more cameras as and when we progress. So let's try and add our first light. Go to light section, corona light. Now corona has a lot of different types of lights. We are not going to explain everything in this. Only light that we need is the rectangle one. Click the rectangle and then click and drag in the viewport. Now you can see I'm changing this viewport to perspective by pressing P. Now you can see that there is a light created, and if you move it up, you can see some of the lines coming from this light. So basically what it shows is the light is emitting from this direction to the bottom. So let me rotate it. Let me snap my angle also. Here you can snap your angle to 5 degree for convenience. Now let's start our interactive render. Now as you can see that there is a light coming from the left side, and like I mentioned before, if I'm rotating the light like this, you can see that the light is coming only in this direction. If you see, when I'm clicking each and every viewport, the camera or the rendering window also is getting changed. We don't want that. We want it to constantly render this camera angle and not the rest. In order to do that, we will open the render setup, lock the viewport to the camera viewport. You can see other viewports as well. So currently we are locking the camera to the Corona one. Now if I'm switching to other viewports, it's not changing, but at the same time it is still rendering. Yeah. Now let's finalize our lighting setup and then we will see how this goes. So this is how the scene is. Now, if we want, we can create more camera and more interesting angles. Now, the next thing what we will try to do is you can see that we are getting a line here for the backdrop. We don't want that. In order to avoid that, what we will do is we will go to the left view, go to editable spline, select vertices of these two, and then if we go down we have the option of fillet. We will click on it and we will increase. Yeah, something like that should be fine. We will simply type in the value of 80. Now you can see that, let me disable the grid. Now you can see that it doesn't have enough segments here. In order to do that, in order to fix that, we will come to interpolation and increase the steps here. 12 seems reasonable. Now you will see our render again. You can see that backdrop line also is gone. Now this looks like a decent studio lighting setup. Let me play with the key light a little more. Rim light is a little strong on the front. Let me move that back a little bit so that only affecting the yeah, that should do it. Let me try and move this target back. Yep, that should do it. Now we will try to add one more camera angle to get better look at our image. So in order to do that, click the camera. We'll rename it to wide angle. Oops. Wide angle. Click, hold the shift button, click and drag. We'll rename this to close up. Come to the camera viewport, press C. It goes to our close up view. Try and do that angle in this way. I'll just add more zoom value. Maybe not this much. Yeah, something like this should do it. Let's see how it looks in this. Okay. Our rim light seems to be quite strong. Okay. Let's switch back to the other camera. So when I press the C again, since we have multiple cameras, it will ask the user to select one of the camera. Now what we want is the wide angle. This is the rim light, fill light, and the key light. Okay. Yeah, this looks more like it. Now, let's increase the exposure a little bit. 3, 1. I should do it. Contrast is fine. Okay. Now, I think our studio setup is more or less done. Let me go through what I have done. So if you see here, there is one, I have kept one key light on the left side, and then we have a fill light, and then there is a rim light. Now if you want to see it a little more clearer, I have given this is our furniture. I have given the key light somewhat in a 3/4 position, and you can always change this position like this. Oops. Yep. And you can see this is the position of my key light, and then we have a fill light, and then we have a rim light to highlight the borders of the furniture. The size of the backdrop you can increase however you like. Now I have given maybe like 300 by 450 kind of a dimension. As per your convenience, you can change however you like. Let me make it 600 and then send it to object. Okay, this looks better. So this is how my studio setup is, and then I have a wide angle camera and a close-up camera to check the material later on if needed. And then if you render this, this is how it looks. In the light mix, I have controlled the intensities a little bit, like key light as expected, having the highest intensity, and then the fill light, and then the rim light. You can see that I'm just showing you how each light is affecting the object. This is my key light, fill light, rim light, key light, fill light, rim light. Okay, now my studio setup is complete. Now we can go ahead and create the material and the UV coordinates of this object. Let me stop the render, come to perspective. Now if we go to material editor, go to materials, materials corona physical material, let's name it furniture wood. Corona bitmap. Now in this we have to load our texture map. Now in my case I have one here which I downloaded from Polygon website. You guys can check out their website. They have some of the best quality renders out there. Bitmap, I am connecting it to the base color. Now let's see how our UVs are. I'm right clicking and then clicking assign to material selection. Now if you see here, you don't see any texture of this image that we just applied in the viewport. Now why that is because it doesn't have any UV coordinates applied to it. In order to do that, we will create one UV. We will give one UVW map modifier. So if you come to the modifier list and press UV, and then it will take you here, and then you can use the UV map modifier. Now you can see that it's working, but not the way we want it to. So let me isolate this object by pressing Alt Q. Now if you see that it UVW mapping is having multiple options. Since our object is like this, what we are trying to going to choose is the box option. Now also you don't see our texture much. That is because it is stretching too much, and maybe the angle or the dimension of the UV that we have used here and the texture is different. So right now it is showing the dimensions of the gizmo, how gizmo of this UVW and how it is getting how it is affecting the object. Now if you see, if I'm moving up and down, the gizmo also is moving up and down. So basically The entire texture is driven by this UVW map gizmo, and if you see in this area that it is getting squeezed in a little bit, it's because there is not enough space for it to show the texture properly. Now, since our texture is in a square aspect ratio, what we will simply do is we will simply give it, let's say, 150 by 150 by 150. Okay, now if you see, this gizmo is projecting our initial texture that I have picked up, and based on the gizmo it is applied to this object. Now this is not the right way or the right direction of the grains that I want, so we will click here and then alignment. If we change, you can see that it is changing the axis, where in the axis or the alignment of the texture. Now this is what we want. This is how the grains should be flowing. Now I'm selecting another object, then applying this. Isolating again by pressing Alt Q. If you see, this one also doesn't have the UV like we want it. Now we don't have to apply it again. We can simply copy paste from here, from the previous object. So copy, then paste. Seems to be working just fine. I'm pressing F3 and then F4 to disable the wireframe. You can see that gizmo is ending here. It's not mandatory to keep it inside the box and all, but for the tutorial sake we'll keep it like this. Let's move on with the rest of the objects and we'll see. Okay, now we have the UV coordinates defined and the texture grain or the texture flow also is fine. Now let's look at the material. We need it to be a semi-gloss with a little bit of difference or the bit of detail in the glossiness. So we will add some reflection to it. By default the reference is a little high. We will reduce that. 0.3 should work. We have glossiness map, normal map, and then atom reflection specular stuff. Okay. Uh, Glossiness map and these two we will be needing. Glossiness map, and then we need. Oh, by the way, I pressed shift key and then dragged this bitmap in order to create a clone, and then loading the normal map. While loading the normal map in Corona, it's a good idea to override the gamma like this. Now, roughness texture, normal map goes directly to the bump. Where is the bump? Bump, base bump. Alright. Now, just double checking if it is working as expected. Bump might be a little high, but let's see. You can see the bigger previews by right clicking, open preview window, and then scaling however you want. We will check the material properly in the viewport. Okay, seems to be looking fine. Let me check the other camera. Zooming in. Let me. There is no denoising. Okay. Great. Wasn't expecting to work just like that. So this is the kind of material that we needed in this particular furniture. Uh, okay, let's check the. Okay, let me check if the denoiser is working. Okay. So disable the denoiser. Now if you see that everything is working fine, but to demonstrate that reflection difference, I'll just play with its brightness a little bit. Region render this area. Go to output, or we can let's control it from the Corona color correction maps. Corona color correction. Connect it back to the reference. Let me increase the brightness a little more. So since this is the roughness map, as the brightness is increasing, it is increasing the roughness of the wood, and hence the reflection is getting reduced. Something like 0.02 seems to be working just fine. 0.04 also should work. You see getting a variation in the grains here. Previously it was very constant. See, now we have a variation. Bump, I'm not going to change it. Bump, if I'm increasing, let's say something like this, as the bump increases, it also reduces the reflection as well. But what I need is the default value of 1. Okay, now we have the material also ready. Let's do a render. Let's do a render. The we will create enable that denoiser back, and then we will do a render. Now, okay, it seems like our furniture is floating a little bit. So now in this, what we have tried to do is, in this video, basically we have given the UV mapping of this furniture that we have modeled earlier, and then we have given a basic wood material on top of this, and we have done a basic studio setup as well. This you can use in your scenes or for the products or the models that you are creating to showcase it like this. Let me just fix that leveling issue. Let me go to geometry selection so that only select the geometry, deselect our backdrop by pressing Alt key, and then we'll move the furniture on the ground. Yep. Alt W is the key or the shortcut that I'm using to switch between maximizing and minimizing the viewports, just in case if you were wondering. Now let's do a render again. Okay, this looks decent enough. All right, guys, so this will be the final video in this series. In the upcoming videos we will be doing similar furnitures like this, and hopefully we by the time we complete 5 or 10 of, or however the number of furnitures are, we will improve our modeling and the texturing and lighting skills. We will be using mostly this studio setup only to showcase the rest of the furniture that we'll be creating. But yeah, I almost forgot to mention this. This model and the studio setup that we have created in this tutorial, I'll be providing the link to download link in the description box below. If anybody is interested in the model and the studio setup to learn more about how the lighting and the other stuffs are done, you can go ahead and download it from there. But it will not be having the texture with it because I don't have the distribution right of the texture that I have downloaded from the Polygon. feel free to download the same from the uh, Polygon website and then use it in your um, furniture model. Yeah, this is it. And try to model the furniture that furniture like I have mentioned in the previous videos. And hope you guys benefited from this video, and if you guys liked it and if you guys learned something, consider liking and sharing the video to your fellow colleagues, and consider subscribing as well. So thank you for watching the video, and if you have watched the whole series, thank you for doing that. It means a lot, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.